Hello everybody, welcome to OXSN podcast, and I'm here with Rob from Adeptus, Psychonautica. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing alright, mate. Like I just talked about just before we started, I'm a little bit under the weather because I've just recovered from a bout of COVID, which fucking sucked. So, but yeah, you know, I'm coming out of it now. I've still got a little bit of a cough, so I might have to just mute myself a few times and just furball into the corner. But other than that, not too bad.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because I saw you wasn't too active on your channel over the past 2 months. But
yeah, I mean that's an entirely different story. That one, which I'm happy to get into. But yeah, it's just been a string of kicking the bollocks on the universe. So I've had some stuff going on in my personal life. I had my computer completely fucking break down on me, and then I've had this COVID. So it's just it's like, right, okay, I've had all the shit for 2023. Let's get all that out of the way, and hopefully the rest of the year will be a bit peachier.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, at least you experience the contrast now. Hopefully, when things get back to normal, they'll seem extra good. Like, whenever I get ill, I'm like, well, if I was just not under the weather, it'd be a miracle. But when I'm not under the weather, I don't treat it like that. But it certainly seems like that would be the case. But so the main reason, really, why I reached out to you in the first place is because your channel and your kind of shtick, which I've come to appreciate a lot more recently, is the more grounded approach to spirituality and psychedelics. And I've got many bullet points of things that I've written down in general so I've got my story in general, how I became very ungrounded, and for the viewers, you don't have to be aware of say Conor Murphy or Leo Gura. But these are two cases where you can definitely see ungrounded, and they have both admitted themselves that they did become a bit unhinged at times. But say me, for example, I became very unhinged in many ways, as I was abusing them very consistently, and I was also so when I first found you, Rob, I was actually in the other paradigm where I was watching your content as you was debunking, say, Conor Murphy and Leo Gura, and I was watching you how can you not get it? I was slamming you, but then over time I realised that maybe my whole paradigm was not exactly perfect. So there's my story, and then there's say, I had a very close friend of mine who he actually took his life for spirituality somewhat, where he thought he was transcending to the next realm and things. And just in general, I just wanted to have an open conversation about these things, as I just appreciate your more grounded approach. So
yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind picking your brain. So what was it when you say that you were watching my stuff talking about Leo and Conor? Where were you at then? What was particularly triggering about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I can't actually remember the exact pinpoint, to be fair, that I was, but I do remember there was one point and I remember watching your stuff actually while on psychedelics, and I've watched Conor Murphy's content while on mainly magic mushrooms. So I was doing.
Okay, now.
I know.
That was good trip.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the thing. So I was doing magic mushrooms once every 2 weeks, if not more. Sometimes I'm only 19, right? And I went full blast down this spiritual rabbit hole, and I was listening to actualize.org all day in my headphones at work, and it was before I knew it, you can really lose your grip if you get really entangled with these ideas so thoroughly about solipsism and things potentially. But
well, I think one of the things that nobody really particularly wants to admit to, but it is just a fact of these substances. They do make you incredibly suggestible. Mm-hmm. You know, that's why these experiences can be so bombastic, because as every kind of little thought and strand of imagination sort of arises, it just becomes something greater. So when you put yourself in one of these suggestible states, and then I would always recommend to people especially while you're in the experience, do not do something like listen to Leo Gura or even myself while you're tripping, because you're so suggestible. You got to take it in. But even in the like the days afterwards, you can still be in this incredibly suggestible state. And so stuff like, I don't particularly want to wail on Leo, but you brought him up and he's a good example. It can sound very clear and very sort of obvious at the time, and it's only really when you unpack it later on you think there's some problems there. There's some holes in his thinking, or there's just some sort of like, he's just gone down some rabbit hole of bullshit, which is, I think, is where he's at the moment with his kangaroo mouse stuff. But yeah, it's that's sort of suggestibility. So I get people who are like pissed off at me, and if you sort of interrogate why they're pissed off, they'll find it hard to verbalise. They're just pissed off because they feel like you're attacking something that they hold dear, although they can't quite work out why they hold it dear. It's just because it's just this suggestible state. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's I'm sure we've all been through something similar with these kind of things, but you can end up in some dark places with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I wanted to ask you, actually. Like, was there any point, like, I don't think I've ever heard from you that, like, you've ever personally had any, like... Because I think, like, with spirituality and psychedelics in general, there can actually be, like, some, common pitfalls when you're first getting into it. Potentially, like, Messiah complex, or, like... There seems to be, like, common things that, like, noobs... But did you ever, like, find that you, nearly developed some, like when you first found them, but I know you found them when you was really young.
Yeah, honestly, no. I've never really had that sort of, I've learned the secrets of the universe, that kind of thing. I mean, obviously, that kind of experience is quite common, but to come back and really believe that you have some sort of, special knowledge or been given some sort of like psychic gift or something like that. I've never really had that as a kind of like ongoing psychosis, which is what I think it would be. If you are having some sort of idea which you cannot reconcile with reality, then you're having some sort of basically psychotic break of some sort. But yeah, thankfully not. I've certainly had plenty of experiences which have left me absolutely rattled and shaken, but I've just always kind of been able to like fall back on this process of just grounding myself in what is like my personal values. My personal values tend to revolve around me as a human being, having this experience of being a human being. If indeed we are all God or sort of some transcendent super being, well, that's going to happen anyway. So for the duration of this lifetime of a human being, then I want to make the most of this. So that's why I always bring myself back to, okay, well, this experience that I've had, this knowledge that I gained, this insight that I gained, how can I make that into the best version of Rob? Like this is the experience that I'm curating for the moment. So I don't see the kind of the point in just losing yourself in sort of psycho babble bullshit, which doesn't really have any sort of help for this experience. And that's not to say that spirituality is bullshit. And I think I'd like to just to like pick your brains a little bit there. I mean, because you kind of using these words of like spirituality. What would you say spirituality is?
Yeah, see, that's actually something, because I know I've watched your video about your definition of spirituality a while ago. I don't know if I can recall exactly, but I mean, like, so spirituality, I think, is like a, to me, it's become like a connection with like existential and metaphysics, I think, where it's more like seeing things from like the bigger picture, and having like a deep like connection to reality itself, kind of like seeing things from the outside nearly. But I think it's like a holistic approach to life as well, and just being more like mindful of like every facet, and of course like there's the present moment and traditional like spiritual teachers and things, but I think it's just like just being more mindful and more conscious in general, and like cultivating like somewhat more like, for lack of a better term, like higher vibrational values, or you know what I mean, just being less of like less neurotic, more mindful and more loving and holistic.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with those as beneficial things. I think you could be a lot of those things without necessarily being spiritual or having had a spiritual experience. Because I think these kind of like spiritual experiences. I mean, I've had more psychedelic experiences than I can count, but the amount of those that were actual like spiritual experiences would be a fraction of that. I tend to. I mean, I'm not saying that your definition is wrong. It's a very like nebulous thing to pin down. But I tend to think of it as something that really kind of like transcends, like spirituality. It almost like transcends the rational. It's this kind of. It feels to me like much more like part of this kind of like narrative of humanity and its place within the cosmos and its place within existence and your place within that, and with feeling that where you came from, and sort of that lineage going backwards, also going forwards. And it's I mean, when you hear this term like mystical experience, I think it's that really kind of cements that feeling of that spirituality, because it just feels like you've just kind of found your place in the universe, and it feels sacred,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's. I do tend to think people often sort of say, "Oh, you like hate spirituality," and I don't at all. I tend to think of myself as like on a spiritual journey. So it's certainly not what I set out to do, but it's kind of where I ended up completely by accident.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I think it's that feeling of kind of like alignment with the universe. I think there's an element of that to it.
Yeah, I think definitely. I wanted to, because you said so when I asked like, oh, did you ever find yourself becoming like unstable with psychedelics and spirituality, and you're like, nah, I already had like, you had your family and your like your principles.
Well, I wouldn't say I've never had moments of feeling of being unstable, just never having that kind of like psychotic break of thinking that I've gained some sort of powers, or thinking that I can, transform into something, or that I can do something psychically. So I've never had that, but I've certainly had feelings of periods of time where I felt like deeply destabilized.
Okay.
But it was always in a way where I felt like I knew the root of what was disabled. So it was some like obvious examples, like I did a lot of work with ayahuasca, trying to get to the bottom of my feelings around my mother committing suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of these experiences with ayahuasca were absolutely fucking horrific. They were it were just kind of realizing the void of emptiness in your life that you don't have from one of your parents being missing at a very young age.
Yeah.
Really brutal things to kind of to have to realize that how much you are missing someone you never knew, really. You didn't really know this person, but you're just feeling the absence of them. And so for like days, weeks after that, I was like, I was but that was a very, for not to overuse the word, but kind of like grounded, destabilized. I was emotionally destabilized, but I wasn't mentally destabilized. And I've had that quite a lot. But I've never really had these kind of like fanciful thoughts of thinking, oh, my son's going to be the next Jesus or something like that,
See, even with me, like that's more of like what when I say like, I was in more of like a Conor Murphy paradigm, like I was never really like, I've always actually been pretty good, I think, with like, I'm quite like good with my own rationality, in terms of I'm not all about like these super new agey airy-fairy ideas, but I think maybe the word I was looking for more is instability, where perhaps maybe I was doing them so consistently, and what I started my last before you started speaking, as I was on about how you had family and stability around you. Well, I was actually living in my own flat, and I then actually I was living in my own flat, which of course, being alone, like I know Nikola Tesla says, like, genius is spawned in like solitude, where obviously you can agree that your mind would likely manifest if you was just in solitude all the time. So I was abusing psychedelics and being alone a lot, and I was having similar experiences. Like I know, I can, obviously with the nuance, like we obviously have our own different experiences, but like Terence McKenna calls it like, every time he does ayahuasca, he goes to a place called the meat locker, and it's kind of like you can have very brutal experiences on psychedelics, in terms of like they can pummel you with like very uncomfortable insights that can destabilize you, maybe emotionally. And I think I was doing them so frequently, and I also was very irresponsible. So just like you were saying how it's unwise to like watch Conor Murphy or Leo Gura on psychedelics, well, I was very young and I was just abusing them, as the psychedelic community just holds them as like the holy grail, and I did see them as that, and they do seem to be like, and most of my experiences were spiritual and mystical, I felt, but I was doing them a lot in the beginning. Like I would take them and I'd just fuck around. Like I remember one time I took like 6 grams. I've taken very high doses. Like for example, when I was 16, I took 7 grams. I had no idea what they were capable of, and they literally threw me into like some suicide spiral of like, and I come out in like trembling shock because I had no idea. But when I was not say like a few months ago, just an example of how I was irresponsible with my use. And perhaps this is why I became unstable with my job and my money and my family and relationships and things, is like I took 6 grams and I rolled a joint, and then I couldn't find my lighter, so I started to try and light it with a toaster under my desk, and then I this is while I was coming up like full blast raging, like, and then I spilt a drink onto the like extension lead and power with the toaster with this zoot in my hand, and I was thinking, the world is mounting around me. I don't know what's going on. I need to put the zoot down. I need to turn all the power off. I need to chill the fuck out before I burn the house down. So I don't know where I started that thread, but
you talk about Terence McKenna and the meat locker, and I think those all like heavy experiences. But yeah, I mean, just from my own side, I would those kind of very intense experience. I mean, I think, you know, you talk about like doing them a lot. I don't think it's necessarily doing them a lot that's a bad thing. I do think it's a lot. It's this setting within which you do them. So, you know, like, I mean, you know, people like myself and, you know, often go on these, you know, ayahuasca retreats, and there you'll do ayahuasca. Like last one I went to, I drank ayahuasca 4 times in like 5 nights. You know, and so it's just like 2 nights, 1 night off, 2 nights, and you know, and I did the same thing last summer. You know, I did 8 ayahuasca sessions in 2 weeks, and the thing is, though, within that you are absolutely every focus and every intention is based around that activity of what you're doing. Whereas if you sat in your home, and you know, you're going to work and you're coming home and you're playing a bit of PlayStation and watching a bit of TV, doing some psychedelics, then you've got all these different inputs going into you, watching a bit of YouTube, you know, on your phone, and so you just end up as this kind of like blender of different sensory inputs, and that will fuck you up.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I like going on retreat. It's, you know, people say, oh, it's so, you could, you know, it's a waste of money, you could just do the same thing at home. No, you can't. You can't do the same thing at home for all those reasons. That the phone's always ringing, the telly's always on, you can hear what your neighbour's doing, you've got to go to work, all that sort of shit. It's not the same. Whereas if you go to one of these things, or you know, make time for yourself, you can do it cheaply, go and camp out somewhere or something for a couple of weeks, but focus purely on it. I don't think it matters then if you're doing a lot of psychedelics. As long as you're doing it in a way which allows it to sort of come in, do its work, and sort of go out without just leaving a massive jumbled of fragmented media shards just fucking jutting through your head. So you come out thinking, oh, fucking, you know, the world is ending, fucking Al-Qaeda, fucking Conor Murphy, I see the pattern, you know, and just brain just explodes. That's where the danger is in it.
Yeah, I think I was doing them like, obviously you want to have days to integrate, and that's one of the main things as I didn't really have any integration.
I would say like weeks to integrate, mate. If it's part of like a longer process, it doesn't have to necessarily be like one session integrate. Do spend X amount of time, but if like I think each psychedelic experience I think should have a couple of weeks to integrate. Now again, you can bundle a lot of those psychedelic experiences together into one thing. But still, yeah, I'd say more than days. You still do some psychedelics. You're still high for the next day. Maybe the day after that, you might have some residual shit going on, or some like mad dreams or something. So yeah, I would say I always tend to try and take it like I would say at least a couple of weeks, maybe like a month or something between experiences. But that's because I'm just getting old and I can't handle it as much anymore as what I used to.
I think it's definitely a very good point. Like, I don't mean to come on here and like, don't assume like for the viewers that I'm like actually saying that psychedelics were necessarily the problem here. Even before psychedelics, I personally had been dealing with a lot of depression for really as long as I'd been like a teenager and beyond. So I've had my own mental health things, and the same with my friend who took his life on a trip in some spiritual pursuit. He also had mental problems going a long time back. But yeah, I think it's just very important that I think the real healing began for me when I really started to get my method down. Like when I was much younger and immature, like I would just take them on a whim, and maybe half of the trip I'd be in the external world, half of the trip I'd be in the internal. But it's like, you want to really figure out what somewhat your method is. Now I like to really take them in, for the most part, silent darkness, and I think that's where the healing really began a lot more. But back then I'd take them a lot more on a whim. Maybe I'd have work tomorrow, and then for example there was like a video by someone called like Easman Gatti or something, and I stumbled onto it while I was tripping on psychedelics, called "The Economy is About to Collapse," and I'm like, oh yeah. And I know, right? So what am I doing? That's not what psychedelics are about. So I'm watching this video, and he's telling me, and I'm like, just like you said, I'm very suggestible. Like, you're very, and you done a podcast with like the Psychedelic Apprentice, and he was saying how, like you kind of open your energy field somewhat, or that's how it seems, where like you want to be a lot more careful and picky about what you consume and what you let yourself perceive. Like you say, you don't want the phone ringing and that's where the value is of going to the retreats, is to stay away from all this stuff. But I was watching like this video, and I later realised that the guy who made that video, really, for the most part, he was full of shit. So I was consuming this content going like, oh mad, but like, you want to stay away from like media's a big enough mind fuck when you're sober. You don't want to be doing that while you're in fucking God consciousness or whatever.
Well, that's it, and because it feels so real when you're in those states, then it's like you kind of assume that what is a good judge of character or not. But yeah, you might not do it. Like I say, it's not just you. Like everybody is just super suggestible. I mean, that's what these things do. They open you up. They completely open up your mind, your soul, your heart. You're just like, everything is like wide open. And yeah, it makes you very susceptible to sort of, import, just like mass importing ideas. So yeah, I would just anything like sort of like lecture based stuff, whether it's and it could be good content or bad content. It could be stuff about, I don't know, politics or healthcare or fucking how to be a parent or anything. But still, it's just not the right time to be doing that sort of shit. So. Yeah. So I mean, it always blows my mind. But it's like sometimes I see people on Discord or whatever, and they're like, they type in, "Well, I'm tripping my balls off now." I'm like, put your fucking phone down. Like Jesus Christ, I can't think of the worst thing to do than be tripping and sit there and like looking at my little phone, like typing, "Oh, I'm off my tits." Like,
do you see how like maybe personally with you, like, do you think if you were doing psychedelics, like not only do they actually bring up like the hard things to deal with, like often, but if you were to do that in like a setting that was just not, like, potentially that could have destabilized you a lot more, like if you was on your phone or...
Yeah. I mean, I've for sure. I mean, if you, let's just say that you've got something major that you want to work on, or even that maybe that you don't want to work on. But you've got something major going on with you, and you're not necessarily aware of it. And then you take some psychedelics, and for whatever reason, that's the thing that's going to surface tonight. So this thing, whether you're aware of it or not, something that you might be like deeply unhappy with about your life or some trauma from your past, and it's going to surface. And if you're not in the right place, then it's just, you've got this thing happening to you, and then you might realise that you've got the discomfort of not being in the right place. It just these things can stack up really fucking quickly. Then you feel uncomfortable. You don't know. You maybe you need to go to the bog, but you don't know where the bog is, and you feel like everyone's laughing at you or whatever. It can just shit can get really bad. I mean, it can get bad enough even being in a place where it's completely catering to you. Like I say, I've been on retreats. I've had horrific ayahuasca experiences where I've just been sat there just feeling sick. I've got fucking just all my demons going on in my head. I absolutely desperately need a piss, but I just know that I can't make it to the bog. I can't even raise my hand to get someone to help me because I'm just so off my fucking tits. Yeah. So it can, to be in completely the wrong place, it could be an absolute disaster. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of people can really traumatise themselves by just being in that wrong situation and feeling like, just something's wrong around them or people around them and sort of and helping with their experience. Sometimes, you hear from people like, oh, I was tripping with these guys and they're all taking the piss out of me. Like, fucking, what were you doing with those guys? Like, that was a bad idea.
Because those things are really like, you're so vulnerable in the psychedelic states. You really want to like, really get your set and setting. Like I say, set and setting. Like, it's just the things that you hear time and time again. It's just like, I've had to learn it for myself. It's like it's almost if someone's watching this, like, who's getting into psychedelics, and I want to say, set and setting, you can't prepare enough. Psychedelics are not toys. Don't really fuck around with them at all. But like, I couldn't take that message in. I had to kind of learn it for myself, and like.
Oh, yeah, but luckily you only have to learn it a few times. Like, I hope for most people. I mean, that is one thing with psychedelics. When you have some of those really fucking horrific experiences, I mean, you've got to be some sort of like masochist not to learn from that. Like, I mean, I learned pretty early on, like, do not fucking do these in like a nightclub or something like that. Like, or I learned that I don't particularly like being in, like, around, groups of strangers. Like, I saw people doing them at house parties and stuff like that. I was like, no chance. Like, I don't fucking want to be sat there fucking, mind open to the world with some fucking bellend I don't know fucking chewing my ears off, like, so.
No, it's like the complete opposite environment, and I think it just baffles me, like, reflecting on it now, how I had really, and this must have been like somewhat how I become so unstable, and maybe it's because I was just immature, or maybe I'm just stupid, but I had so many trips, like, in the early days where my setting and my preparation was just, like, not wise at all. Like, I remember, like, for one of the best examples, I think, well, one of my friends came round. He didn't really have any idea about psychedelics that much, and I was like, oh, do you want to trip on mushrooms? This was like well over a year ago, and he come round, and he'd rushed out the door in the morning and didn't actually, like, eat anything. I've been telling him how good you need to, like, kind of prepare your physiology, because all the energy, like, plays a crazy scalable role. And he come over and I'm like, yeah, I mean, your first time, I think a 3.5 is like a good starting dose, and I didn't even have any scales, so I don't know how much. Yeah, so I brought in what was probably like 4 something grams of Liberty Cap magic mushrooms, and I took those as well. And we have a call reminiscing of this on my channel. But then, like, we go out and we smoke some marijuana, and quickly, like, my friend just, like, loses the plot, and we're both, like, so immature and, like, not ready, and then he locks himself in the bathroom, and I'm like, unlock the door, I'm worried about you, and then things, and, like, I don't know, it's just, I just had many experiences like that, like where you just like, you don't want to take it on a whim, like you really need to prepare. And I think like it's really difficult to know what landscape you're going into before you've been there. Can I ask, Rob, like, was there any point where, like, do you think it's possible to know, like, everyone knows the words don't do it justice, like, do you ever find psychedelics being so out there that you could not have possibly ever had any idea, no matter how much you tried in sobriety, like, you just, like, you get into a certain trip experience, and just like the terror trip I had on 7 grams, I said when I was 16, I come out of that, and I was like, reality is pretty scary, the fact that he could even do that. Like, I had no idea. Like, did you ever have an experience that was like, whoa?
What, just like overwhelming levels of reality?
Well, you just, yeah, I mean, like, you come out of it, or in the midst of it, you're just like, I didn't know reality could, like, get this out there.
Oh, for sure, yeah. For sure, mate. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's one of the things I kind of love about those experiences, because, I mean,
yeah,
that's, you know, what are we reaching for here? We're reaching for something that is like just beyond ourselves, and so yeah, I mean, you can have those kind of experiences, and sometimes they can be beautiful and like humbling, and you're like, oh wow, you know, I like I say, I realise now my place within this, but in this vast universe, you know, and I'm this tiny piece, but still a piece, you know, and still there's a significance to that, and there's meaning in it. Or sometimes it can be like, oh my God, I am just a crumb, and you know, amongst this tornado of pure consciousness, like, and you know, it can feel that overwhelming. But yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, I would say they always tend to lean more towards those kind of humbling experiences. Certainly, some stuff I've experienced has just been so bizarre and so strange. I mean, I say bizarre, it doesn't really do it justice, because it doesn't feel bizarre at the time. It always feels completely like a seamless narrative at the time. Like, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. But in hindsight, like, what was going on, like, you know, like experiences of me as like a godlike super being plugged into a network of godlike super beings that are all just flowing through each other as like fucking, you know, just like every thought becomes a new reality, a new universe, and just everything's just like laughing and merging into one, and there's no boundaries between consciousness. It's just flow, and it's like, it was mind-blowing in its scale, but also every so often, like, it's like like too much. It's just, you know, you feel the gulf between like the human brain and like the filters that are in place, and just what, you know, limitless consciousness. But that limitless consciousness is fucking breathtaking. It's you know, it's one of the things that's worth reaching for, I think, within these experiences, because then it does, I mean, I do find it humbling and grounding, and you know, one of the things that I tend to get from those experiences is this kind of this thought that you don't need to know. Like, not only do you not need to know all this stuff, you can't know all this stuff, and it's not your place to know all this stuff. And even if you could know it, you're still some fucking hairless monkey, and you're going to take your shit in the morning. So what does it really matter if you know the fucking secrets of God consciousness? Why don't you just like be a human being, go out, get laid, fucking have some fun with your 18 years of life, you know, so you can die as like a, you know, a fulfilled human being, and then you'll transcend to whatever you're going to transcend to anyway. So, you know, what's the point in fucking? It would be like, the example I use, like, if you saw like a bee, you know, like a buzzy bee, but it was trying not to be a bee, it was trying to be a fucking elephant or something, you'd be like, you fucking bellend, you absolute bellend, just be a bee, fucking eat the pollen, make honey, you know, enjoy your life as a bee. Don't pretend to be an elephant. You cannot be an elephant, you're a bee. Just be the fucking bee. You know, and that's how I feel about when I hear all this, like, you know, the people who get really obsessed with all the God consciousness. And that's not to say there's not value in those thoughts, but the value has got to, like, you know, compile back into a human being. but just sitting there flouncing about, going, "Go, I'm so enlightened, I'm so God conscious." It's like it serves no purpose other than to make you look like a wanker. But if you can embody that, if you can live your life, I mean, when you come across like someone who is truly spiritual and truly a good person and a true role model, they don't have to tell you how fucking enlightened they are. They don't have to tell you what a good person they are and how much better they are because they've achieved God. You just know this is like, wow, this is a great person. This is, they don't need to tell you this. So all these people who are like going beating each other over the head with how fucking spiritual they are, don't realize. I can only assume they don't realize how fucking counterproductive that looks. Because I don't see anything particularly spiritual, like I say, with the sort of the Leo gurus of the world. Conor Murphy's a different kettle of fish. Actually, it's hard not to like the guy, and I think he's kind of like blundering his way through his existence. And there's something I think more genuine I'd say about Conor Murphy than certainly about someone like Leo.
Yeah.
And at least it looks like he's having a fucking good time doing it. So I'll give the lad credit for that. But still, I think he's got a little bit lost down his rabbit hole.
That's one thing where you said it looks like it's a good time. When I was in like the more Conor Murphy paradigm or even Leo Gura, one thing that I do know is how much fun it is to think that you know everything, and everyone else is like when you think that you're like, could you imagine how it would be somewhat to be Conor Murphy, because you completely believe like the whole.
Well, I think there's two aspects of that. I think that there's like with, and I think Connor's done the full kind of roller coaster of this, but you could be in that bit where it's like you're having a lot of fun with it, and it's it feels very kind of like fulfilling and all, the cosmic joke and all that kind of shit. Yeah. But there's also, and I think this is why actualized has such a bad reputation, a well-earned bad reputation, because it can also very quickly turn toxic with people just, like I say, beating each other over the head with their kind of pseudo-spirituality, putting people down, just being really venomous little turds. And so it's kind of like, you see this a lot on any kind of like internet forum of like, people can get very venomous and very sort of like carried away and lost in their own bullshit. But particularly when you've got that extra level telling you, actually, the more deeper you can go into this, then the better you are at it. Like, so the more you go down this rabbit hole of superiority, then actually the more spiritual you are, and that's how far you are above these. The more distant the stuff coming out your mouth is from reality, well, that just validates how fucking enlightened you are. Like, it's really fucking, like, shitty. And that's why, I've referred to actualized many times as like a toxic shithole, and I think it's. I've not seen anything that's changed my mind about that. And but I do one thing that is promising though. I do come across like a lot of people like yourself who go through. It's just like a kind of a phase that they go through, and then when you get to the end, you kind of realize actually there's nothing fulfilling in this at all. There's no like spiritual nourishment. And that doesn't, and again, just to be clear with Leo, like, that doesn't mean that every single thing that comes out of his mouth is bullshit. Yeah. But I think the way that he fits it together into this idea of his superior spirituality, that is bullshit. Whereas some of the practices and the statements he might make are true. And clearly some of the statements he makes are absolutely not true. so it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, fair play. I think, because I think, like what you were saying about, and I do kind of want to get a bit into like your like metaphysics and like kind of how you see everything, but I think like what was I going to say, like, because I know you're on about being more of a human and being more integrated and somewhat like with culture, and you're a lot more, I see, about like bringing people together and friends and more about like community and things. And that's what I think I've been like going a bit more towards that end than just being like going like deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of like better and more, really it really is more like superior understanding, like well, that's how it's sold, at least with the actualized.org thing, because it's like, it's more like how deep have you contemplated it, for how long, and like how evolved is your understanding. And it kind of makes like because who was it that said, I think it was I can't remember who done the speech, but he just said like, our knowledge makes us like cold and unkind, sort of. And I sort of see that, like, because when I was like really going down the actualized.org rabbit hole full blast, that's when I got into the bit where like no one could tell me anything I didn't already know, kind of, where it's like I my own like view of the world just got replaced, because I was so like, I was quite like a lost soul, and I was searching for answers. And then actualized.org tries to present itself as like a ultimate worldview somewhat, and through listening to so much of that, it's almost like he just like replaced the way I saw everything. And I was also doing that and watching him while on psychedelics and everything, so it's like and this is where the instability kind of got into my family and things, is because like I was so like in such like a different paradigm from everybody else, where it divided many relationships around me, because it was hard to talk to people, because I knew everything, and like other people didn't, somewhat, or like that's how it seems, or like and then this also resulted in a deep feeling of alienation, in terms of like when I was really like in the Leo Gura paradigm a lot, like it got to a point where, and even Leo acknowledges this himself in a video. He said like, oh, I've got to the point where I'm absolutely alone and I love it. Well, that was kind of with me, but it was like my paradigm was so alien to traditional Western paradigm, where it was like I couldn't really speak to anybody. But it really did get to a point where like it was really hurting me to the and because I felt so alienated. And this leads into so I had a friend way back in school, when we was younger, and we parted ways as we matured, and I got really into the spirituality stuff, and then I became like alienated through watching loads of actualized.org, for example, and it was a struggle somewhat, because no one was in my paradigm, and it hurts. And that's not really normal, is it? Like, we can agree that, like, say with Leo Gura, like, and even I heard you saying that he's kind of like alienated himself, and like of sniffing his own farts about how enlightened he is, to the point where it's like he doesn't really relate to any other humans, because you're just so isolated, and like mind manifesting because you're alone. So I was like in this paradigm that I wish somebody could understand, like, why am I so alone in the way I see things? And then this is when I reunited with my old friend back in school, and he was on his own thing with the personal development, and he was doing really good. Unlike his past, he was doing quite poorly. And as we reunited, I introduced him somewhat to these spiritual ideas, just to update him on who I am and what I've found since we parted ways, now that we've reunited. And I'm confident that the way I would have communicated this to him, and not just him, but to a lot of the world, is I actually was somewhat in like a, because I turned this spirituality and psychedelia and actualized.org, just like you said, I think I turned it somewhat into like a cult and an ideology. So, it was like I would certainly, like, I wish that there was somebody else who could understand. So I would intentionally somewhat like plant seeds of ideas, and ideas can be dangerous, and I think actualized.org and spirituality is a very good example of that. So and I'm not saying this is like solely like the ultimate reason, but when I reunited with my friend, he was not really on the spiritual stuff. but I was very much so, and I was aware that I was trying to somewhat like convert people to my paradigm because I felt so alone in it, and it was alienating. And eventually, he caught onto it. He didn't like Leo Gura. He has like the same kind of views as you, where it's like he thinks he's a bit like manipulative, how he has that kind of like cult-like undertone. But he went down his own rabbit hole of spirituality, and he ended up calling me up some days, and he's like, oh, I'll finally escape from the Matrix, and I'm like, well done, welcome to the other side, brilliant. But like then he'd say things like, he said like I'm just, and he was very like rational and things, but he'd say like, and I was very serious about the spirituality and stuff, but he'd say like I'm just looking at things like around the world and that, and I can just tell like it's just not real, and I'd be like, yeah man, I know. But like, so I would kind of like, because I don't know how you feel about like spiritual awakening, and I'd like to ask like what your kind of views on awakening in general are. But when he was going through this process of like, oh, everything's like not real, everything's just nothing, I'm like, yeah, I had that as well, that was, you know, this is awakening. And then and I wish I voiced my concern, or was at least like conscious of, because I never thought this would ever be an option, and it's all fun and games until I guess it gets serious like this. But like he said,
is this the same guy that you were talking about who ended up taking their own life?
Yeah. So, and I didn't want to say it in the way that, like, I've been quiet about it somewhat, because I know that like a lot of like quick to, like, I don't want people to like to say like I'm to blame. Like he was done his own stuff as well, but he certainly wasn't interested in spirituality and that before like we reunited. But regardless of that, he went down the rabbit hole, and he ended up saying to me at one point, like, for like 2 weeks in sobriety, like he said he was in like a vibratory state of fear, like the world was like vibrate, like he'd wake up and it would just start, and it was like, must have been like some pure like psychosis sort of shit. But because I was also in that, I was like, yeah, and I understand what you're going through. And then, like, not exactly that, but the same sort of stuff. And this is like the danger of actualize.org and things like this, is it's like, when you like go into that ideology or that paradigm, it's so like, well, I guess this is kind of the definition of a cult. It's like, it's like, so every question the cult or the ideology has an answer for, so you can't really escape it. So like, say like everything that I have a question about, Leo would eventually answer that question. So it's like a paradigm that you get locked into, kind of, and it's really scary how this can happen, kind of. But
yeah, I mean, just a couple of points on that. So I mean, the thing is, they have an answer for it, but the answers are all in a very generic way, because you know, although people sort of throw around the label of cult a lot for Altruis, and I don't think it's a cult in terms of like the typical cult, but it is a cult of personality, in that there is this kind of like, you know, this figurehead who is being revered, and people are following this kind of like doctrine that he's pumping out, and
can be,
will defend it to its last, even when he says something completely ridiculous.
Yeah. So
there's definitely elements to this cult of personality, but yeah, in terms of you know, getting the answers, and I think this is part of the problem with these online communities, not just Actualize, but sort of, you know, anywhere, is that you're not really having that touch point to another human being, you know, and so when someone like yourself or your friend is going through something, people are just, you know, like one-upping each other on the forums and stuff like that. There's no real visibility of what the actual person is going through. I think this is why the retreat setting is so much better, because there you are with people. You are face-to-face with people. People are guiding you through this experience. People will spot that you are struggling probably before you even acknowledge that you are struggling, and they will guide you through these kind of experiences. And the other thing, you know, particularly when you asked something about awakening before, and your friend talked about, leaving the Matrix, and you were like, yeah, good job. It's very difficult to understand. You kind of assume that we're all going through the same thing, but we're not. My experience of awakening, I certainly didn't have these, feelings of like nothing is real or something like that. Now somebody might have that, and somebody might have that and be able to cope with it. Somebody might have that, and that's the thing that sends them over the edge. That this whole nothing is real. So, but yet when you get these kind of online communities where people are like going, oh yeah, that's it, you're just awakening, it's fine, you'll be fine in a couple of days. Yeah, maybe not. It's there's not like a predefined state of these, sequence of these things, and a lot of the danger with these communities is that people like Leo, and I've got to say, if there's one thing I've really, out of all Leo's flaws, the one thing I've got to pull him up on, the guy has like zero compassion, and he's so detached from his own experience of a human being that he doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't seem to realise the effect that he's having on this group of people. So that when he comes out with something really flippant on the forums, or I'm sure he seems to have handled things in his way, and not necessarily had something that's like led to what happened with your friend, but so he's answering things in his way with zero understanding and zero like actually no, these might be people in trouble. I mean, when I've been on the actualized forums, it is a absolute meeting ground of people with very, very definite, very obvious mental issues. There is some serious fucking problems on that forum. Some of the moderators fucking should not be moderating fucking dog shit, in my opinion. But they're all egging each other on, and so if like, I think one of the best descriptions I heard for the kind of like the behaviour that are actualised, which came from one of my friends, James Jesso, and he was described it as that there's a lot in the way that Leo describes his own activities which feels like a challenge to the audience. Like, I did all this 5-MeO DMT and it got me here, so therefore you should do it. And the guy will say this kind of like, you shouldn't do this, but it's a challenge. It's like, but this is where the real God, if you do this and you get to this level of consciousness, and no, you just don't, unless you just don't understand. You just don't, unless you've done it, you just don't understand. So there's this constant like challenging of his very vulnerable, very fragile, very destabilized audience. And I just see people's fucking heads explode there. And a lot of people contact me like because they want to talk about that experience. So like, and like, especially the stuff around solipsism, like it's which to me it's kind of almost like it's hard to understand how people can get so destabilized by that. But I do, whether I get it or not, at least I understand that people are going through this, like people are believing this and they don't necessarily want to believe it, and they don't want to believe that all their loved ones are just figments of their imagination and all that shit. But Leo said it's true, so it must be true, and it can really it really fuck people's heads up.
I think he just kind of assumes that like the people watching his content, like because I don't think, as far as Leo has expressed himself, is like he's always been like pretty grounded. He's not really had mental issues in the past, but like a lot of people who seek this kind of personal development content are like people who like just need answers because they feel lost and things, and they're quick.
I would say that Leo is actually displaying, like, I don't think he, although he will say he is, I don't think he's grounded at all. And that's not me, trying to be like, I'm so grounded, but you can judge people by their behaviour, and if people are going on about sort of, being able to transform into an alien kangaroo mouse in front of a camera, then that's not grounded behaviour.
I don't know. You spoke about that earlier. What was that? I don't know.
Yeah. So in my opinion, he's not grounded, and this in fact, the behaviour that he does display, this lack of compassion, to me really does speak of like a traumatized individual, and he's he's assuming he's telling the truth. He's spoken about how he was sort of groomed, had some like paedophile episode when he was a kid, and he was obviously had some bullying issues because he was a bit overweight when he was a kid. And what I see in his behaviour, and this I don't want to be like an armchair psychologist or anything, but it's just my opinion, is someone who is traumatised, who is looking to make sense of the world. He's got all these physical problems, and so he's reaching for he's reaching for answers, and as luck would have it, he's found an audience that sort of caters to it. So but I think you don't really have to look too far to see like a very damaged individual in Leo. I think it's written all over him.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's about as far from by his own words, like the guy's about as far from a human being as it is possible. He thinks of himself as some sort of alien. So that to me is, I mean, and again, this is just my opinion. That to me is a kind of like a very unhealthy mindset. I mean, whatever he thinks, he is a human being. Now that's not to say that all human beings are the same, and if he's happier being alone, that's fine. But I think there is, the behaviour that he's displaying and the kind of teachings that he's sort of putting out there, to me, are not creating enlightened human beings. They're creating, like I say, a toxic shithole of bad ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about the whole thing, honestly. Like, I was super ideological and, like, attached to him, like, a lot more in the past. But yeah, I think, like, it doesn't seem very holistic, like, in a community sense. It seems more like my understanding is more evolved, and, like, can you reach the higher understanding?
Yeah, there is a clear hierarchy to it. So it's not kind of community based at all. It's a, like, it's who, there's this bizarre combination of like pickup artistry. So it's like who's fucked the most women and who's had the most deepest, profoundest awakenings, and who's done, who's had the biggest chat with God. There are clear like things which are best, and those are the things that Leo has done. And then there's the kind of like the hierarchy beneath of like people who are on the path to being like Leo, who are desperately trying to be like Leo. And then there's a scum at the bottom for the like the unbelievers and stuff like that, and who will he'll be very flippant with. So that to me doesn't feel like a community. And again, it does tie in much more with this kind of cult of personality.
It just seems like a bit like not even just like his community in general. I just mean like an actual like healthy like human lifestyle in terms of like just being more like holistic with like, because he said like himself, and that was the paradigm that I got locked into, is like I basically couldn't really talk to anybody because I was just like in such like a paradigm that didn't really fit with like how asleep everyone else was, because like most modern people don't go down it, and then if you don't get it, then if you don't go down this rabbit hole, then you don't understand reality. Therefore, like, so when you were saying with like he had like a community that seemed to like give him the thumbs up with this. Well, this is what I had like when I started my channel as well, like when I started just ranting on psychedelics about a year ago. And this is what just how my community gave the thumbs up to me on everything that I was saying. This is how like when he was going through his awakening before he took his life, I was doing the same thing, like welcome to awakening, and then but so like one of the main points that I wanted to say talking to you today is that like awakening is not as black and white as a lot of the spiritual community will like, because a lot of these people like is awakening and spirituality is a lot more nuanced than people anticipate, in terms of like there's many different dimensions to it, and people just basically assume that you're either asleep or an NPC or you're awake. So like, people like I know how it works like on the media somewhat, and like I know there's a lot of people who will see people who like someone will be like an anti-vaxxer, therefore they see through the lies, they're awake, or this person knows about psychedelics, they're awake, like this person like eats junk food, they're asleep. And like it's nowhere near as like. So when I basically was just a guy ranting on YouTube about psychedelics, and everyone was just like, yeah, well done. And I was on there going, our society is honestly just a disgusting mess. We're literally a disease. Like talking about Western culture, because I thought it was as black and white as leave the West, walk into the garden,
become a communist.
Yeah.
Smash capitalism.
Yeah, literally like anti-cap. And so then everyone's just like, yeah, I know, right? The government's so corrupt. You know about psychedelics. You know what you're on about. But it's like, and the main thing I think that I learned just before I reached out to you is that, like, obviously there's a big stigma in general Western culture. I think you would agree that people think psychedelics, that's drugs. Drugs are bad, right? So
I think it's definitely improving since from when I was a teenager. But I would say that's the overall still the majority. Yeah.
So people would say like, so like I found psychedelics that were like, obviously judging my own experience, have crazy potential and have done so much for me. And then I have a culture that just rejects this idea completely. And I'm like, well, you guys are so ignorant with the psychedelic stigma, that it almost like unconsciously I got into a paradigm of like, they don't get it, we get it. So the people who know about psychedelics get it, and the people who reject psychedelics and think they're bad don't get it. And it's just like, it was just a very black and white, like, you either know about psychedelics and you're awake and you think the government's full of bullshit, or you're an NPC.
I think a kind of a good way of thinking about it is this kind of like this word of awakening. And I don't particularly, I'm not a fan of these kind of phrases like awakening and enlightenment and stuff like that. But if we just go with this one of awakening, I think this kind of black and white thinking, and particularly what you see on a lot of these forums, stuff like that, is that this is an event. You have a before, and then you have an awakening, and then stuff is revealed. You will then be able to see through the truth of politics or vaccines or whatever, or consciousness. You've had an awakening, and I don't think it's like that at all. Awakening is a process. It's not an event. Okay. It's not like asleep and awake. It is, if you want to use like asleep or NPC or whatever term, but then you are going through a process of waking. So you can have somebody who is who has their eyes are open to certain things, but not certain things, because they're going through that process. I mean, the idea that I've been sat doing psychedelics like 30 odd years now, and that the idea that I know everything or have done everything or consider everything, it would be complete bullshit. Like, awakening is a never-ending, race to a set of goalposts that are just constantly moving themselves. You will never be done with it, nor should you want to be. How fucking boring would it be to suddenly that's it, I'm done, I'm so fucking awake, so enlightened. That's nonsense. There's always something there that you can work on, always think improve on, and life is constantly happening. It's not fucking static unless you're some basement dwelling fucking turd, fucking just cutting yourself off from all experience. It's shit is just happening to you constantly, and this awakening process is going on constantly. It's I had a friend who described it as I think it's like enlightenment is the constantly ongoing process of realizing how stupid you were 2 weeks ago. Exactly.
That's brilliant.
When I was your age, I thought I fucking knew everything. 5 years later, I realised I was a bellend. 5 years later after that, I realised I was a bellend. Then and I'm sure that I'm gonna, and it doesn't mean that's you're kind of like, oh my god, I was so cringe. There's some awesome parts of my life there, but you sort of recognise, oh my god, like there was some stuff there were cringe, and that's it. It's just this never-ending journey. So awakening, no, it's absolutely not a black and white thing. It should not be a black and white thing. And anybody who tells you that is completely full of shit. Anyone who tells you that there's some hierarchy to it, or there's some like set of steps, and you do this level of awakening, then God awakening, then universe consciousness, absolute bullshit. It's just it is whatever it is. It's your life, it's your process. Everybody's is different. We've all got different fucking shit going on. Some of it will be very internal, as you kind of work through stuff. Some of it will be very external, as like your fucking mind goes out into the consciousness, and like it's a mishmash of all those things. So yeah, I mean, these kind of people try and like codify it into some sort of dogma of like, listen, they just need to get out more. Like it's like get a fucking life. It'll be whatever it'll be.
Yeah. Can I ask? Do you think like so about like just awakening and stuff in general? Like say. Yeah, so like I guess let me ask, like, say for example, like with my friend who took his life, I believe he perceived that he was going to transcend to the next realm. Do you think that there's any potential like validity to what he supposedly realized and what he pursued?
I think that whatever we could perceive of as next realms is, or whatever we could conceive of is nothing like it would be. So I mean, yeah. I personally do believe that there is more beyond this existence than this human form. I believe that this, we are here for, some kind of purpose. To basically like the classic, like, the universe has made us so that we can experience what it is like to be a human being, and that after the end of our death, that experience will be kind of like, become part of the universe. That's it's like the universe is asking a question: what would it be like to be Rob?
Yeah,
well, there's only one way to find out. I will run the calculation, and that's me. I am the calculation that is going to answer the question: what is it like to be some smart ass dickhead from fucking Manchester who takes taking a lot of drugs? And so yeah, and then that experience, I'm going to mingle with other people having experiences, with my wife and my kids and my friends and stuff like that. And at the end of it, there will be a cumulative amount of experience, which I believe will, become part of the universe. But that is not me. That's not Rob. Yeah, Rob is this finite thing, and when this ends, and whatever comes next is just beyond comprehension. So that if I'm having the thought, I am going to transcend this, then I'm instantly on the wrong path, because I'm not going anywhere. Like this is it as far as I'm concerned. Like this, the thing that thinks it is Rob is here. Whatever comes next, and again, you can get this experience on psychedelics if you take deep doses. You realise you feel fucking nothing like yourself, right? It is not you. You are not going to take Rob to the next level. So basically, Rob is going to die.
Yeah.
And that's the whole transcending point. So in one way, I think your friend had a point, but in another way, I would say that he also completely missed the fucking point, because he was here. The point was to have this experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. The universe can wait. That's going to happen anyway.
Yeah. That's how
if you believe in like multiverse and parallel lives and all that shit, it's already happening. So you don't need to fucking kill yourself, right? Because it's going to happen anyway. It's already happening anyway. But right now you've got a job to do, and that job is to nourish the universe by collecting this experience of you as a human being. That's the only fucking purpose. That's the purpose of what I believe that we're here for. We're here to collect that experience, make it a good experience, make it a good experience for the other people around us. So we're like collectively a good experience, and upload all that sort of that joy and that experience back into the sort of like the the universal collective. And so yeah, like, you know, the transcending problem solves itself. You're gonna die. You're gonna die anyway. It does itself. Like, don't bush it. You know.
Yeah, that's what.
Then it was like, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. Well, people were saying like, well, being like nihilistic, right? In terms of like what you're saying, like rushing it, like skip to the end. Like even me, like I've contemplated suicide and things. Not that I would ever go through with it, but in the past, like I've turned over the thought, and what I've concluded, and it was actually on a psychedelic trip. I concluded this. I think it's like, skipping to the end. Like I don't know, it just seems a bit boring and not really what you're supposed to do. Like, oh, why don't I just skip to the end? It's like, well. Do you really want to do that? Like, yeah, technically, you might as well, like, existentially, but look where you are. There's so much cool shit to do that, and like, I would much rather like pursue this life with that.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, if you can think of any activity, which one is better by just skipping straight to the end? It's like you go dancing and you just fucking teleport from one end of the fucking dance floor to the other. Like you've missed all the dancing. Was that better? Like you stood at the bottom of Mount Everest and then you just teleport to the top and you're like, all right, that was you're missing out on the entire journey. You hook up with some like beautiful girl and then suddenly just jizzed in your fucking pants and that's it. It's like there is nothing. The journey. I mean, it's a cheesy cliche, but it's true. The journey or the doing is the best part. That's the experience of being with someone or being with someone that you love, of taking like a pilgrimage or a journey and sort of earning that view from the top of Mount Everest, or going into space or whatever. You don't just want to end up straight back on Earth again. You want the journey of like flying around, being in orbit. So yeah, that's how I view suicide, and I don't take, I don't want to make light or anything of people who are in those situations of deep suffering where you can feel like, oh God, there's no way out of this. That's a whole different problem, and I get why people can, feel that life's just too much. I want to check out.
Yeah.
But I would say that's a different thing to this kind of, I think what you're describing of this, like, there's something better on the other side. I'll check out early, sort of thing. That's a very fucking like I say, it's that to me is that just skipping to the end. You've missed the whole point.
Yeah, it's like I'd rather just pursue the illusion or the dream, even if it is that. But like I'd rather not skip to the end. But I think in general, everything that we've spoke, like I think and this is why I wanted to speak to you originally, like I think I've come to appreciate a lot more the way that you approach everything. Like I say, when I first found you, it's just I was basically like laughing at your perspectives when you was criticising Leo Gura, only to realise how like unstable I was, and then I kind of realised that half of my ideas were actually not as solid as I thought they were. This then, like...
do you mind if I just ask, like, can you remember in particular which one? Because it's a funny thing with particularly with the Leo video, particularly the first one that I ever did in it. Like, people went fucking bananas over it, like, and I don't think there's anything in there that's particularly, like, insulting. Also, really, I think the only content in there was, like, the guy thinks that he can heal people with his psychic superpowers by sticking 5-MeO DMT up his arsehole. I don't think that's legitimate. And I'm like, that's not particularly controversial. Like, I didn't say anything about whether he actually is God, or I didn't say anything about like, I didn't discredit any of his like personal experiences or anything. I just said, I think this guy's unstable because he thinks he can fucking cure people by sticking fucking drugs up his arse. Like, I
wish I could recall what exactly it was, and I have the unreleased trip report on my computer here now, and it's unreleased for a reason, because I took a free 5 mushrooms one day, 5 grams the next day, and I was recording on my phone, just talking shit as I do, and my phone like started breathing with me, and then like everything just mounted, and I was just like in shock on the floor, like just going like, what the fuck, for ages. But then and then somehow in the midst of that, I'm just watching you criticise Leo, and I do distinctly, I don't remember what video it was, but I was watching you, and and thinking like
what a wanker.
Well, no, there was one point, I don't know what it was, I wish I could recall, and I think I was half contemplating making a reaction there and then, but I didn't. I kind of wish I did, but and this is in the midst of a trip, just to note that, like, in this same trip, like, later in the video, I'm recording, I'm like, if you just eat junk food because everyone else does it, you're a sheep. If you just get the vaccine because everyone's so, you're a sheep. Wake up! And shit like that. So obviously, but you said something in that video, and I remember I burst out laughing, going, "You're so fucking stupid, how can you know?" Like,
I'd love to know. If you do remember what it is, I'd love to know. I mean, I'm just interested, because...
Yeah, I do.
I mean, people, you know... Yeah, people have like these very visceral reactions to like the, you know, like gurus being criticised, and it's just an interesting phenomenon. So yeah, if you do remember what it is, let me know.
I honestly, I wish I could, and I don't know how I stand. Like, it's not like I necessarily agree or disagree with everything or nothing that you've said, or like I still don't know how exactly I feel about Leo's perspective versus your perspective, or and like, because it's still like evolving, of course, over time, and I've only recently somewhat like realized that like it's not as black and white, and there's a lot more nuance to it. But yeah, it's like at one point, yeah, I saw you as like a like this paradigm of like I remember thinking actually like a few months down the line, I was watching your channel and I was like, "Isn't it weird how some people can take psychedelics like this and they never get it?" I was like, how do you not realise yet that you're like, and then all like Leo's ideas, like, how do you not take it and go, I'm, everything's like, I don't know, just whatever the insight might be, but maybe really it's just like psychosis.
See, that's a kind of interesting point, because what I would sort of say to that is that I do. Like, yeah. And then this is the kind of like the thing I think gets lost in that whole like Leo. So I mean, firstly, I just to comment on something you said. Yeah, I mean, first of all, like I do not. I mean, I hope anyway. I do not position myself as any kind of like teacher or guru. That's not my shtick at all. I'm like you. I'm just someone. I'm going through experience and I'm commenting on it and having a bit of fun, sort of, you know, experience. And if someone finds value in it, all the better. But I'm certainly not trying to tell people what to do, but I am going to comment on things that are happening within the sort of psychedelic culture, which is why I comment on dudes like Leo and Connor and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I lost my train of thought there. What was I saying? Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So like when I was like let's do like a video which is criticizing Leo, or like, you know, again, I'm very specific about what I criticize him for, which is these claims of being able to cure people, you know, cure every human problem and ailment by them doing a 2-week course of 5-MeO DMT with Leo, which is ridiculous. Like, we can all admit that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't say, again, that's not to say that every single thing that comes out of his mouth is bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's not. You know, he's said a lot of interesting things, and he's a very interesting communicator. So but you get this thing whereby the guy has been put on such a pedestal that you cannot even point out that the most ridiculous thing he has said is ridiculous. Yeah? Without people flying into a frenzy.
Yeah.
And when people say, like, how can you have done all these psychedelics and not have had these things? I have had all those psychedelics, and I have had those realizations. The only difference is I didn't jump on YouTube and immediately start saying that I could cure people by sticking drugs up my asshole. Like, that's the difference. That's the bit where Leo's missing out on it. It's that grounded like bit of like, should I think about this for a while? Like how true is this that I can cure people psychically of all human diseases? Let me just stew on this one for like a week or two. No, he jumps straight on fucking YouTube, runs his mouth, makes a complete pillock of himself, and then has to like backpedal, and then wonders why he's getting criticised by dickheads like me who are going, "Come off it, dude, just fucking chill for a bit," you know. So I don't take anything away from his God experiences or his personal experiences. Like, I know I've had them. They are profound. They are fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing I take away is his interpretation of those experiences, in that he has knows some kind of superior spirituality, like all humans should follow his example, like he knows best. And I would say, no, dude, it's just that you're a human being. Everybody's fucking different. You're actually, you know, like I said, I think there's actually a lot of trauma and stuff going on there, but you do you, and the only bits I really criticise him for are his objective claims. I never criticise his subjective claims. So if he wants to think that he's God or a fucking kangaroo mouse or whatever, again, the kangaroo mouse is funny, so I'll take the piss a bit about that. But I'm not going to, you know, deny that was a profound experience for him. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it fucking was amazing. Like, and if he just said that, I would have no, you know, no problem with what he's saying at all. But it's that he's always trying to make it into. Basically, he doesn't know the difference between subjective and objective. Like, so his subjective experience is his and it's profound. But then to try and say this is the absolute truth of the universe and I know because I'm kangaroo mouse god or whatever, it's like, dude, yeah, just tripping, fucking chill.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I was going to say something, I can't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know why I originated. But yeah, it's not like, I don't know, I just remember watching your video and I was just thinking like, yeah, I don't know how some people just like, they never get it. But yeah, I guess it's different for everyone, and yeah, I guess it just depends. I think that's what a lot of it is. Like, you can have legitimate like mystical experience, but then it's how you interpret that and how it can get entangled with other ideas. Like I'd have an awakening and then I'd rant on YouTube about the awakening, but then in the midst of that I'd also like have loads of other random ideas entangled with it. Like, just because I had an awakening doesn't validate like everything that's coming out of my mouth. And
no, it can ask question like what did you do with the awakening? Like, how did the awakening add value to your human experience?
Yeah, I know.
Like that's. I mean, you don't necessarily need to answer the question, but that's the way I would sort of, you know, answer it. I mean, and it could be just in that it was incredibly fun. That's a perfectly legitimate answer. You know, you could say that I took some psychedelics, I had a fucking awesome time, and it just, you know, I feel happier and less stressed because of it. That's all that's needed. You don't need to like, not everything needs to be some sort of cosmic awakening. So it could just be, I had a fucking awesome time. But if then you're going out on a limb and you're saying that, you know, I had this awakening, it was significant, it was the most important thing ever, then I would expect you should be able to say like how. It's not just enough just to say, oh, I had it and you don't get it because you're not the same as me. Yeah. It's like, yeah, well, you know, if you can't put it into any kind of like words or any kind of like model of behaviour, then maybe actually you're just full of shit. You know? And it's a possibility. Maybe, you know, you get a lot of, you know, people taking, you know, these experiences like, oh, this was like, you know, I'm a higher dimensional being, but then the person just starts like a complete arsehole. So really, what was the value in it?
Yeah. I think that's like
terrible. So yeah, you've got to like pass out that sort of like, yeah, you know, this is that whole sort of integration thing. Like what actually did you get from that experience?
Yeah, like, see, I would normally like, I would like just kind of go into them like somewhat on a whim, and like the psychedelic would just like reveal things to me and go, oh, I needed to hear that, great. And then like, but I normally I end up losing it. So like in terms of like how I lost stability and things, one of the facets is so like the people around me, like my family and that, they understood that they didn't really understand the psychedelics, and they thought, whatever, that's fine, just keep them to yourself and get on with it. That's how they thought back in the day. So like I'd go into there, I'd have like insights, and I go, oh, I needed to hear that. Now I feel rejuvenated. I'd have an afterglow, and I'd feel like really good that I'd like realised loads of things that like seemed to have gave me like a boost, and now I know who I am more. I'm grounded more, like, and then but it became somewhat of a crutch. So where like, oh, and I still seem to have this phenomenon a bit where like I go into a psychedelic experience, I have like some crazy often for me psychedelics they do just seem to be like a lot more like cosmic and awakening and like insightful and stuff that I need to hear when I go in there. And I'm like, oh, I needed to hear this, great. Now I know who I am, I'm more grounded again, and then I come out of it, and then I can pursue life like from this grounded place. And then over like a week or so, I end up like forgetting like, and I feel less like somewhat motivated by what I found in the trip. Maybe it's just an afterglow. But like, and then I go back into it, and then I remember again. And I know a good friend of mine who says the same thing. They're like, you feel lost. Do you feel personally that like, if you feel lost, that a psychedelic trip could reorientate you and remind you of just like your direction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just had that experience in January. You know, like I mentioned, I'm going through some very difficult personal, challenges in my personal life at the moment, and they really came to a head around sort of Christmas and New Year. And it just so happened that I had an ayahuasca retreat booked in the first week of January. So like just after New Year, I was going on a retreat, and I booked that before all these problems started. So I had no idea it was, I just thought it was to go to Spain for a week and get out of the cold weather. But then, I went to Spain, so this ayahuasca retreat. My head was already completely up my arse. I had all these. I was like really at the, just drowning under the weight of all these kind of stuff that was going on in my personal life. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, like, should I even drink this fucking ayahuasca or not? Like, I was thinking this is just going to make things, even worse. But I thought, fuck it. I felt like the vibe was good. I felt good with the group. I thought, right, I'll drink. And it, just like you described, it absolutely just compartmentalized everything. Like, it was like, from what seemed like an overwhelming catastrophe of problems. Like, literally, I was just catastrophizing everything. It was like, this is fucked, that's fucked, everything's fucked, I'm fucked, everything's just going to be fucked from now on. Welcome to the age of fucked, this is me. And then, and it's sort of like, the ayahuasca just went, like, no, okay, let's do one thing at a time. What you can do is one thing at a time. Let's start. What's the first thing? Do this. And it just like literally just laid out like a roadmap for me. And the phrase jumps to mind of like, you're faced with something that just seems impossible. Like, you've got to eat an elephant. Like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Start at one end, take a bite, and keep going. And that's so all these kind of personal problems, which to me just seemed like I was drowning in over Christmas.
Yeah. Just
I came back from that retreat, and the problems were all still very much there, very much present. But now it was like, just do one thing. If you do this, then once that's done, you can do that, and once that's done, you can do that. It's just one foot in front of the other. And so I mean that I would say that retreat in January probably saved me from like a fucking nervous breakdown or something, because I was like really struggling.
Yeah.
And it just really just basically it was like being in a dark forest. It shone the light, and like there's the path, off you go. And you've still got to walk the path. You've got to do the hard work. You've got to do the walking. But I mean it fucking sorted my head out a treat. That said, it was brutal. It was one of the fucking hardest retreats I've ever done.
Right.
But it was so fucking worth it. It's a tricky kind of subject, because you don't want to be the person who says to everyone, "Oh wow, you're having some shit going on in your life. Do psychedelics." Like they'll sort it all out. But I would say for me, in that particular circumstance where it was a controlled retreat environment, I had these people guiding me through it, people I trusted, people I really care for. That worked for me. I don't think I could have done the same thing just sat at home in my bedroom, just with all the stresses of everyday life going on.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think people have got to use their own judgment as to when to take them. But to short answer your question, I absolutely believe they can. If you are having one of these like crossroads in your life and things are feeling insurmountable, and you've got stuff going on and you need a bit of like help, I think in the right setting, psychedelics can really, offer that insight to you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, really. Just in general, like I said, I have a friend who says just the same thing, and that's how I feel. And I think potentially is because I've been at like a crossroad of what it feels like of like instability for a very long time, and I think that's why I turn to psychedelics so frequently, is because what I find, and even today, and it's really been a phenomenon over the past like year, is like I get lost in the midst of like cultural obligations and stresses and many of just like general like nuances with just life. And then if I take mushrooms in particular, they often, like you say, it can be very brutal, but I normally end up coming out the other side of that with a deeper, like better understanding of myself, my problems, and a better, more refreshed way of going about it. And then over like the next week or so, I lose that glimpse, and I don't walk with the same like light in my step and same like knowledge in my step, and then I somewhat turn back to them to then have them shine the light in the darkness for then me to get reorientated.
Well, I mean, I'd offer a bit of advice.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I think is really valuable is to journal those experiences. Like get a diary, and like the morning after experiences, just write in it. Just write as much as you can write in whatever way, shape, or form it comes out. And you can sort of think, oh no, I mean, the classic trick is like this. You always think, oh, I'll remember this. I don't need to write it down. Like, no, write it down.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised at the kind of the words that come out. And then as you know, as you go a few days down and you start forgetting these things, you can refer back to how you were feeling in the immediate sort of aftermath. And I've been doing this for a while. I've got like journals just full of stuff of all the different things. In fact, a lot of like the logos and stuff from my channel came from tripping and then sort of like writing stuff, just drawing things like the morning after, like, oh God, I remember seeing this rune and these shapes and these glyphs and stuff like that. So I try and just get them all down. And it's very sort of therapeutic, I find, doing that. And also, another thing I advise is like always try and do these things from the point of view of you. So you mentioned earlier, like before you've gone on about like other people who've had the vax or other people who've done these shit. Like if you are putting your brain over there in regards to, like I said, then you are missing the point entirely, in my opinion. Because it's very easy to sit there and be off your tits and like be like, oh yeah, this person that and that person that. No, put it on you. Like, and like if you feel something, like then feel it from your perspective. Because you've got fucking no idea what other people's like motivations were for doing this or that, or why they had to do this or that, and it's just so like pointless and sort of it is the kind of classic like ego-driven behaviour, like they're shit because they did this and I know better and stuff. It's like no, put it on you. Forget what everyone else is doing. That's not your story. This is your story. Think about you and then write it down and make some notes and see what that story turns into.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, it is easy, like you say. It's like just with insights in general, you think that you'll remember it, and then you come down and you just like with psychedelics, you just forget like half of the stuff. You're like, everything was so clear, and then
I've had so many times where it's been like, I will never forget this. This is really my, and then like 2 minutes later, like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah. Oh, well, but yeah, just to sum up that bit super quick. But yeah, it's like that kind of crutch of the psychedelics is my family and my people around me were okay with me doing the psychedelics, but as I became more like unstable through abusing them, but I was also using them as a crutch. It was almost like something I needed to remind me of my true nature. And they ended up enforcing that I couldn't take them because they were concerned for me, rightfully so. But I felt like I needed to turn to them because I needed that like regrounding and reorientating. And that actually was one of the things that I lost stability with, is I actually lost my my flat, as it wasn't technically in my name, but I basically got removed by the people who cared about me, as they didn't want me like alone watching Leo Gura taking mushrooms all the time. But I think for the most part, I imagine the time flew by so much, so I'm sorry if I Like, I didn't mean to
Well,
keep you here for a million years, but
no, it's been a good chat.
Yeah, I have honestly, I have a lot of gratitude for your approach, especially when you were saying earlier with the less kind of like, I really like, I don't know exactly how I feel about Leo Gura exactly, but there is somewhat a clear pedestal how he's always like, he's like just a head in this like very fixed background, and he's like, but I do like a lot more just the authenticity of like, you're just a dude and you're just having like fun and you like talking about these things. And it was like, I like how you didn't actually come out here in the first place to be like famous YouTuber. You just like talked about things you liked in a very humble manner, and that, like, the way that you speak about it, it fills me like emotionally a lot more like happy, and like with a more of community and humanity than just someone who's like delivering facts and teachings.
Well, I mean, communities are like, I think, something that's really important to me, and it ties into what you said earlier about as you were going through these experiences, you felt like you were alone and that you were sort of disconnected, like people around you didn't understand the kind of the thoughts that you were having there. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Like, I really do believe in this sense of community, but I also recognise that there's like a gap here in what we call the psychedelic community. Really, we're talking about like a lot of stuff happening online. I don't think it's sufficient. I don't think, and this is not a criticism, it's just the way that it's evolved. But I kind of, what I want to do, and whether I don't know to what degree I do this successfully or even at all, but this is certainly the mindset that I have, is that I want to try and like, really just be, come across as like, I'm just an ordinary person having these experiences. Take of it what you can. I'm trying to build like, the community, these online communities, so through things like Discord. I always try and engage as much as possible with the people in my comments, not just being a dickhead with them, but actually like responding to like, here's this, even people like who've set out to disagree with me. And at some point I'm looking to, set up a physical location whereby, people can come and do sort of like ceremonies together, and hopefully something which is a lot more cost effective than the sort of like some of these retreats, which can be incredibly expensive. So I'm trying to figure out a lot of these things, like how do we make this a proper community? Like how can we have a real psychedelic community? And yeah, it's that's kind of like, I think, like my big multi-year project, and what that looks like I don't know, but I want to, I actually feel like a lot, I've got a lot of gratitude for people like yourself, in this, people who are willing to engage, because who the fuck am I? Fucking, just fucking some dude from fucking Manchester just running his mouth off, like. So I don't think there's anything particularly special in like, in me as a YouTuber or whatever, but I do think there's something special in the potential of the community, and that's all of us, like. And that's why I think it's so much better to engage with ourselves as human beings, rather than this kind of way of engaging with ourselves, like stuck away on our own, thinking that we're, communicating with the God consciousness and sort of, like I said, blowing smoke up our own asses kind of thing. Because the community aspect is beautiful, honestly. When you have a group of like-minded people in the same place, going through some of these extraordinary experiences, and then being able to talk about it in a way where there's just no judgment, everybody understands each other perfectly, there's no hierarchy, people aren't trying to one-up each other. It's beautiful. This is one of the reasons that I go on these retreats. And it's just just being able to sit there and just say without any kind of just to say what happened to you last night, like God, yeah, I met with the creative force of the universe, like the churning heart of knowledge and existence, and it knew me, and I was it. And you can be having this conversation over breakfast, and people just be like, yeah, and I know, isn't it amazing? Like, me too. I saw fucking aliens fly up my ass. It was fucking amazing, and that's what I want to show. Like that, I think that's what I kind of want to facilitate in some way. That sort of sense of community where people really can sort of come together and connect that way. But yeah, well, I'll say we'll have to see what shape or form that takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that definitely like my soul kind of yearns for. I've only had like really one in the flesh connection with people of this nature, and it felt like physically healthy to be surrounded by people who like understand. And I've been very like, there's no one around me really to this day where I'm very much like alone in the flesh of who understands these things, and that's why I was like so somewhat advocating on my friend of like when he was having his like awakening. I was like, yeah, man, and like I wanted people to kind of, because I wanted to build kind of. I remember referring to him like, I was saying to him like, you're like the only person who really gets this stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, when I first set out on my channel, that was like one of my main, like if not my main thing, is like I want to build a community as well, and there is like real power with the community. It's not just, and like we can actually really like change things. Say like there was like a small community that made like decriminalizenature.org or something like that, I think. And like there's a lot of power with just like with communities in general. And yeah, I'd really love to see that succeed for you, and I'd love to like do as much as I can to kind of help bring that to come to fruition. And I believe it will happen somewhat, because this is the gift of life, and something that I like think of like the reason why we're here is like, it's like I almost feel like the universe will kind of give you what you want ultimately, because like it's almost like the perfect incarnation. Like if that's your dream to make a community in that, I somewhat believe that you'll see that come to fruition. And yeah, I'm super.
I think so. Yeah, I think a lot of it really is just about engaging with the universe. Like in whatever shape or form, whether it's like, getting out there, being in nature, engaging with other people. I mean, I totally agree with what you just said about, I think like lots of communities is better rather than like sort of one megalithic uber community. You see how those kind of, those mega communities can sort of get sort of stagnant and sort of have some sort of element of corruption to them. But lots of little communities where there's lots of ideas fermenting and sort of rising up, then, and there's people who will like the way that I say things, and there's people who like the way that you say things, and there might be some overlap there, and there might be some disagreement there, and even disagreement's good, because that's like, if it's a good faith disagreement, then you can engage with it and engage with different ideas, just like we've done here tonight. There's some things we might agree about, there's some things we might disagree about, but it's the engaging with each other that engage with the universe, engage with, and I think that's the beauty of it, rather than this kind of like mindless following a dogma, like, oh, somebody said this, so therefore, well, that's true then, I'll just believe that then, because it sounded good when I was off my tits on fucking on mushrooms. Like everything sounds good when you're off your tits. No.
I remember actually thinking like when I found Leo Gura, I was like, well, this guy's clearly thought about life more than I have, so I'll just swap my paradigm for his. Which was a dodgy move.
I will not take anything away from Leo. I would definitely say that guy has thought about things a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think the guy's a fraud or anything. I think he's absolutely sincere in what he believes. I just don't agree with a lot of his conclusions. But yeah, I mean, it's very tempting to see someone who seems to know what they're talking about, and just like, okay, they've done the heavy lifting, I'll import all that, but yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's dependent on them having it all together, and I would say for Leo, not all of it is. Not some of it is very well thought out. Some of it is fucking bonkers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think overall, I think that was a super epic chat, and I'm definitely very grateful for that you came on, and I definitely I'm a lot more like grounded in that now, and I think talking to you actually done a lot for me personally.
Well, thank you.
And I think that's like probably like nearly 2 hours, so like I'm happy to wrap it up, but I was just wanted to ask, like, this is completely like on you if you wanted to, like I'm happy to talk if you wanted, but like I said, you said at the start, like you're happy to speak about potentially what did go down in that over Christmas. I'm not biased, I'm not concerned, but perhaps maybe you would like somewhat want to voice it and like have a word. But if you want to end it or whatever, I'm completely comfortable with either or. But
yeah, no, I'm happy to sort of give the bullet points of what happened, because a lot of it I've actually discussed in some length on my channel.
Oh, really?
So I mean, if throughout sort of, if you look through the kind of timeline on my channel, there's a few videos where you see that I do together with my wife Rachel.
Yeah.
And she's, again, we've been completely open about this. We talked about it since my channel started a few years ago.
Okay.
Like, she's struggled with anorexia since she was a teenager.
Okay.
And I mean, you can see it in her. She's very little. She's very thin. And really, what happened throughout 2022 was this was spiraling out of control in ways that we didn't really realise. On top of that, I mean, we live in Switzerland, and the spoken language here is German, and the term they use for anorexia, the translation is thinness addiction. You are addicted to being thin. And anorexia, it certainly does have a lot of the same destructive behaviours as any other kind of addictions, like drug addiction, stuff like that.
Right.
There'll be a lot of deceptiveness, a lot of manipulation, a lot of hiding things. They try and hide how bad things are actually got. And so along with her anorexia, she was also taking some prescribed medications to help with her anxiety, some anti-anxiety medication to help keep the anorexia in check so she could eat food. And that also spiraled out of control. She ended up very heavily addicted to prescription medications. And so basically, as we got to coming up close to Christmas, I just realised something is really wrong here with Rachel. Because when you live with somebody, me and Rachel have been together over 20 years, you don't really notice the little changes, you know what I mean? And so I hadn't really realised how far out of normal her behaviour had become. Yeah. And then at kind of Christmas time, we just had this Rach, something this is not right. What is going on here? And then a lot of stuff came out, and I'm not going to kind of throw her under the bridge by sort of going into the details of it, but it just came out that she was really struggling. Things had got way out of control with her anorexia, with these medications she'd become addicted to. And we just needed to get professional help. And I mean, what I've just put in sort of, into words really doesn't highlight how serious it was. We were in life-threatening situations here, so it was. Yeah, that's why I just thought, stop the channel, stop everything, just focus on trying to get Rachel the help she actually needs, and that's been going on now for a while. It's still ongoing, and. Yeah, that's really about as much as I can say about it. I've just got to put my focus on, I've got 2 kids. I'm trying to make sure that things feel normal for them while something pretty fucking extraordinary is going on with the mother. Obviously, it's caused a lot of disruption around the house, and sort of, with all the kind of all the stuff around the hospital and things like that. So it's been a fucking, it's been a really fucking brutal time. It's actually been kind of psychedelic in its nature. Just how fucking bizarre things can be. But yeah, we'll just that's it. Just like I was saying before, I take it one day at a time, taking one bite out of the elephant at a time, and hopefully, I want to get back to doing the YouTube stuff. Interesting that you mentioned stuff around Conor Murphy, because he actually put out a video recently explaining some of his kind of behaviours, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. It's actually a really good video. I quite enjoyed it. It was quite long. I've got a lot of ideas where I want to get back to it, but it's just finding the time, because like I said, all my resources are just going towards Rachel and the family at the moment. That's about as much as I can say about it at the moment, mate. Hopefully when she's better, we'll be able to go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure, like, really, obviously, my compassion and empathy to you, and I think one thing that I've found in, like, turbulent times really is, like, I don't know if this is a rational thing, but I really do have, like, a deep trust in how everything will unfold, and it's just kind of like abiding to, although things obviously on a relative level and everything can seem like turbulent, but I think that the idea that I'm just like some bacteria on a rock and everything's just going to shit and like everything's gonna fuck up and I'm gonna, like you said, these are the dark days now from here on, whatever, a while ago, you said like, oh no, these are like everything's gonna go downhill from here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know again if this is like a rational idea or if it has any ground, but for some reason I do feel like some real like authenticity in just trusting the process, because I really don't believe it's a fluke, and I'm not saying that takes away from any of like how, of course, it's very difficult and everything, but that's just one thing that I always try and keep in mind when things start to seem to get shaky around me, is just kind of like trust the universe. But yeah, I mean, I don't know particularly like what I can say about your experience there, what you're going through, but I
mean, one thing that I've sort of found a lot of sort of like peace from is, which might be a good way to close things off, is the what's called the Serenity Prayer. Now, this is something that gets used a lot by addicts in things like Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. It's one thing they say there, and I think it's something that I've found really sort of like, well, in spirit with the conversation, very grounding. But I'll just read that out.
Yeah.
It's, you're kind of speaking to your higher power here, like to whether that's God or the universe, whatever. But grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think, like, just saying that once a day, just keeping that in mind. Particularly when you're dealing with like challenging circumstances. Yeah, I cannot change Rachel. I can change I can change how I react to this situation that's going on, and recognize the difference between those two things and just take it one step at a time. And that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm, like I said, that's why I'm more or less keeping quiet about it. And when I'm getting to a place where that kind of work's done, then I'll probably come talk about it a bit more on my channel.
Yeah, just we can only do the best that we can do ultimately. But
mate.
All right, okay. Thank you very much for
been a pleasure, mate,
coming on today. And
thank you for asking me. And let's do it again sometime. Let's catch up sometime in the future.
Coolio. All right. Thank you very much.
All right,
I wish you the best.
Cheers, dude. Bye.
Right, bye.